Hey everybody. Hopefully everyone's having a good evening, good day, good morning, whatever. So I guess today it's only me on the stream, so I thought maybe I would stream a little while I'm working on some like sculpting and work like that. So I haven't done too much of this as of late. So we'll see how it goes. So anyone else who's here or comes here, feel free to ask questions about like what I'm working on or anything along those lines. If people have been paying attention to like Instagram and stuff from between the Bolter and me, you've probably obviously seen that I've been working on this Dark Eldar Raider model for a while now. And the blog, I feel also, I guess if you've been looking at the blog and Instagram, it sort of suggests that the model's actually finished, and well, he, for the most part, is, and I could say that he's finished. But I've been still playing around with the model. There are a few small details and stuff that I want to try and remedy and fix. And I've also done a little bit of work on the model space. I didn't really want to spend too much time on it, but I wanted it to still kind of have some visual interest. And so for the model, I was using one of the pretty standard now Necromunda bases. Hey Dave. Hey Eli. I I have been forever working on the Eldar. But so let me. But he is actually almost done. But to add some visual interest to this little Necromunda base, I trimmed down some of the central portion and am insetting this little piece of like brass mesh to kind of add some visual interest to it. And the brass mesh that I'm using is it's from a company called Aber. If you've ever heard of that, they're, for the most part, as their name implies, or not really as their name implies, but their logo, it says Professional Update and Upgrade Set for Scale Plastic Models. So essentially they just make a whole series of components, most of which is brass, of different mesh for all sorts of stuff, mainly for scale models like tanks and anything like that. So I got some of that and have been playing around with it. If you do decide you want to work with stuff like that, you really want to get yourself a cutters that was designed to cut brass. And in this case, I have this Xuron core clippers that was made in the United States that was essentially made for clipping brass etching and stuff like that. And it makes the whole process much, much easier. So if you do want to work with brass etch or anything like that, look around a little to try and find some clippers that are designed to cut stuff like that, because for a while I had been using just X-Acto blades, and while they work, they really destroy the blades. So you have to go through them really quickly, and it just doesn't work very well. And if you look at the little mesh that I cut here. Like I was able to essentially put it in place and then just use this as kind of a scissors and trim it around to get the nice little, to get the nice rounded edge. Hey Ward Sylvania, nice to see you here. Yeah, Eli, I just can't stop working on trying to improve and make little modifications. Oh. Alright. Yeah, so that's the progress on the base. I think I might actually want to, like, one of the things that I never loved about a lot of these Necromunda bases, while they look cool and whatnot, I think a lot of them are, like, overly complex and busy to the point where, to me, it doesn't really scream believable. Like, if you think of, like, metal walkways and shit like that, at least from what I've seen, there typically isn't a ton of, like, special, like, greebling and all that other stuff. So, I think by adding the little wire mesh, I think that helps kind of simplify it as well as give it some interest. And I think maybe even tonight, I might fill in some of these little bolts here. I mean, they look okay, but like, I don't think they're really needed. Okay, what do we have in? Where did I get the mesh? The little mesh was made by a company called Aber. And I think I had ordered this on eBay, but there are a number of, depending on where you are, like in the United States, there are a number of like hobby places that will sell stuff by Aber. One of the things, they make a whole bunch of like replacement barrels for like tanks and machine guns and stuff, some of which are like really cool, which almost makes me want to go and like convert an Imperial Guard tank or something so I could use them. The the Necromunda bases do have tons of tripping hazards. Yeah, so, I mean, I feel for the most part, once this base is painted, you really won't be able to see most of the detailing underneath it. But I think I probably will paint all of that, and then I'll place the little wire mesh over top of it. I don't know. We'll see. I've not really played around with it at all in the past, so maybe it won't. So one thing, let me try and find the idea of using, the idea of using these little Aber brass mesh and stuff was lifted from Nicholas Filstrom. He has, I think it's NP Miniatures. Let's see if I can find him. He's done that. For some reason, when I type in Instagram, Captain Timbley, his stuff is what always comes up. Great hobbyist. But okay, let's see if I can find it. Oh yeah, okay, Nicholas Filstrom. Yeah, as of late, he's been painting a lot of really cool old orc models. But yeah, so here, for instance, he, a little while ago, had finished painting his whole series of these little awesome looking robots. And for his bases, he did a similar thing where he took some of those Necromunda bases and covered some of the detailing with a little thin, fine mesh. What does he say here? Yeah, he says with some fine interlaced mesh from Aber. And yeah, so that's another thing that's interesting. If you... Let me bring up the workstation camera again. It's probably really hard to see. But yeah, it's not gonna come out well on the camera. But this little mesh here, from far away, it just looks like there are just tiny little squares, but the little mesh, there's some elevation to them, and they're actually interlaced and overlapping. So it's like even more detailed than what it sort of appears from the first glance. So it's probably overly detailed for what we're working on, but it's cool nonetheless. Okay. Hey Johnny, nice to have you here tonight. Yeah, so as some of you I've already mentioned, I'm currently the only one here tonight. Both Greg and Eric, they're in Baltimore seeing Weed Eater in concert. That and the goddamn Gallows. I wanted to stay back and work on finishing the finished Eldar model. But okay. So, I have a little list here of tiny little details and stuff that I had been considering modifying on the Eldar model. And so I think I will start to try and do some of that sculpting. I guess since I'm working here, I'll pull out the main tools that I use when sculpting. Okay, where is everything? For the most part, I largely only use an X-Acto knife, one of these color shapers. I typically like to use the little, what do they call them? Like the angle chisel, or like almost like scalpel bladed color shapers. I use one of the smaller ones of those. I have a big tub of this hand cream to act as a lubricant to prevent things from sticking. And so this is actually something I've only more recently started using, and it helps a lot. Particularly depending on what type of modeling putty you're actually using. But overall, I find it works a lot better than water. Weed Eater is a good show. Well, the three of us have seen Weed Eater a number of times. One of the shows, I think we saw them, it was either in Columbus, I think it was in Columbus, Ohio. They were smoking and stuff on stage and passing the stuff around to people in the crowd. Vaseline works well too, yeah. No, yeah, that's true. There was a whole lot of damage and loss of life, unfortunately, with the recent series of like tornadoes and stuff in America. Yeah, Eli Bonereaper, like, so we've seen them in concert a few times too. Okay. Alright, so let me get back to what I was working on. Wow, so you were that close, Johnny. Damn. Okay, so I think for this sculpting and stuff that I'm gonna use tonight, I'm gonna use a mixture of green stuff and epoxy sculpt. And then I feel that's what I typically use nowadays. Yeah, so I guess for those who don't know, in and around Nashville in the United States, there were a series of tornadoes the other day that caused a lot of damage. I haven't read too much about it, but it must have been really bad. Okay, so I don't know about other people who like do a lot of sculpting, but I tend to like waste a ton of green stuff and other sculpting putty. I know Mr. Pink says that like anything you mix up, you can actually freeze and it stays for a lot longer. But I've I've never really taken to that. Like for the most part, it takes me so long to use the stuff that I do have that I don't really mind very much. Hey Mandarin Shade, nice to have you here. Things are going pretty well. It's just me here on stream tonight, so I decided I would try and do some sculpting and other hobby work on stream and see how well or how poorly it goes. Okay, well, Artsylvania says, I probably waste on average 75% of the putty I mixed up, even though, yeah, I feel it's at least 75% for me too. But okay, so I cut off a small amount of the green stuff. The stuff I have, I just typically buy from the army painter, and they say the perfect tools for all models in miniature wargaming miniatures. I wouldn't say it's the perfect tool. If it was perfect, they wouldn't sell the two putties already connected together. So because they do that, I typically will cut out that little center portion and then just discard it. And so I have two relatively equal portions of the two types. Then I do the same with the epoxy sculpt. Yeah, I mean, for my brothers and I living on the East Coast, in and around like Pennsylvania, Maryland, etc., there are like very, very rarely tornadoes, so we have almost no experience with that. With the epoxy sculpt, I typically just try and get roughly equal portions of the two halves of that as well, in a similar amount to the green stuff. And then once I'm roughly satisfied with that, just mix them all together. Yeah, so that is something I've considered, like trying to use the putty to make other small things or like make cabling or rocks and stuff, but for whatever reason, I've just not taken to do it. But I probably should. Yeah, so there are a lot of putties, like most of them either Milliput or Epoxy Sculpt, all those, like they harden a lot harder than green stuff. And so almost for most cases what you're working with, it's better to do something like that than just using straight green stuff because once it hardens, you have more flexibility in how you work with it than after. Okay, typically after I've mixed the putty, I then go and like wash my hands because like my fingers get all sticky and not really workable. So just a minute, I'll be back. All right, I'm back. All right. With the putty mixed up, I open up the hand cream, and then I typically just take whatever tools I'm working with, dab a little of it on, and then wipe the surface of the tool with it on the side of my thumb. Then I'll do that with the X-Acto blade too. Most of the time, once you've applied the stuff once, you don't really have to do it again, but you can as needed. I also have this like little other sculpting tool that just has two like pointy ends, which sometimes I use that too, so I'll put some lotion on that too. Okay. Oh, say hi to Kelly for me too, Eli. Yeah, see, I've considered adding a little bit of like Vaseline or hand cream to my hand while mixing them, but then I was like worried that maybe that would somehow affect how well the mixing and stuff happens, so I always shied away from doing it, but I imagine it would be fine. Okay. Alright, so and then typically anytime that I'm working with it, I will just take off a small amount of it and then use the X-Acto knife to like take even smaller amounts of it and apply it where I want to work with it. Okay. So, so here's the little axe arm of the Eldar that I'm working on. And some of the cloth, like I think I want to try and tidy up some of the edges, so that's what I'm going to be working on now. It's probably not going to be a whole lot to actually watch and see, but we'll see how it goes. And so then once I apply it, I will just go in with the color shaper and kind of push it around a little bit until I'm happy with what the stuff looks like. But now, for the most part, all of what I'm working on is kind of trying to make all of the different transitions and stuff look really seamless. And some of that can be pretty hard. Like, oftentimes, like, if I've done a lot of sculpting, the easiest time to realize that you didn't really make some of the transitions fine enough is once you've gone in and primed your model, and then it's like, well, shit. Look at all these edges and stuff that kind of look shitty. So I'm trying to avoid as much of that as possible on this model, but we'll see. Yeah, see, that's another thing. Like, I have vinyl gloves or latex gloves and stuff from like lab that I could wear, but I've not actually taken to wearing them. My camera is really shitty. Like, the camera is just like a web camera, so it's like largely only made for picking up faces. I have like a nicer like DSLR camera, but the problem with that is for it to actually work well, you need to get like a capture card, and at this point I haven't yet done that. Yeah, see, look, that's fucking horrible. Like, it just all it does is it focuses on the cutting board underneath. Like, so sorry everybody. You're not gonna be able to learn much by seeing what I'm doing, probably. Sometimes when you're sculpting, if you want to get like nicer transitions, it also helps if you have like some more of like the metal tools. They allow you to add a little bit more pressure and pull out and tease the putty into finer transitions. That's harder to do with like the color shapers. But I will say, since what I'm using here is like a mixture of epoxy sculpt and green stuff, like once it's hardened, like it's much easier to go in and sand. Like oftentimes Tamiya makes like these little like sanding sponges, and like they work really well for like sanding and improving some of those transitions. Hey, lifeboat. Okay. Yeah, so Massive Voodoo has lots of really good articles and stuff, and I don't remember if I've seen. I think they probably do have one about making your own sculpting tools, but essentially, like any different shape or whatnot could potentially be used to get different effects with sculpting, and even just like a simple needle or something um, can kind of do wonders depending on what you're trying to work on. Okay. Okay, so now I'm trying to add a little more detailing to this Eldar's axe. Like I sculpted some little power cabling, power couplings and stuff on the blade of the axe, and then I'm kind of reshaping like almost like a little gem at the base or at the end of those little cables. So we're obviously not going to be able to see that on camera because, yeah, well, there it's sort of focused. Yeah, so dental tools work really well as well, and like you can pretty easily get similar stuff on like Amazon or other online websites, and you can just get all manner of different shapes and sizes, and like hell, I think I have a whole series of them that I haven't really used. Like here's like another one. I feel with sculpting, oftentimes everybody kind of finds their own series or set of tools that they really like and they find useful, and then they sort of gravitate towards those. So I feel just the more you get and experiment with, the better. Another thing that can be really useful for different like sculpting and stuff, they make like these like little, for like clay sculpting, there are these little things where essentially they have just like a little metal ball at the end of a little metal ball, and they can be good for like smoothing stuff out, or also like using it to make like chain mail or other different effects like that. Oh, hey, Eric. Yeah, it focused for like an instant and then went back to shit. Oh, so you're back, Eric? Um, well, depending on how you are, if you're free, you could join the chat or the stream rather. God, all these different pictures and stuff on Instagram, like all the pictures that I take. Like I feel oftentimes when I'm working on models and stuff, the easiest way to get a sense of how things are going is to just take a picture and then look at that, and then you'll see all the things that are wrong with what you're working on. So actually, maybe I'll take a picture of the axe so it's easier to see what I'm laboring over. No, I can't even get my camera to focus on that. Okay, there we go. Okay, so... Alright, so here's a picture of the little axe that I'm working on, and so... Yeah, see there you can sort of see this looks kind of bad up close. But I'm working it, kind of reshaping the little energy cabling and stuff on the axe there. Yeah, it's interesting looking at it so closely. It makes it look pretty bad. God. I'll probably want to try and make that better. Even better than I already had it. Yeah, well. Yeah, but this is what I spend my time on. All these little details that only I will ever notice and see. Well, I guess some of you will now too, now that I've brought them up to you. So, they'll be our little secret, sort of. Alright, well, that's good enough for now. Okay. So, if we look at the Eldar here, I don't think we're going to be able to get it to focus. So let me actually just take another picture. But so on his belt, I also sculpted a little like loop for his axe, so he has some place to carry his axe when he's not holding it. Okay, so there we see he has the little on his side there. It's his little pseudo holster of sorts for his axe. Yeah, actually, Mandarin Shade, that's a good idea too. milliput, since it's a lot more water soluble than some of the other like sculpting putties, if you add enough water to it, it like you can almost like paint it over things, and you can use that to um, fill in all sorts of details and seams. Like that's I feel almost one of the easiest ways. If you glue two halves of something together, you can still see kind of a seam like that. You can often paint in milliput in that, and then when it hardens, just like sand it, and you'll get a really nice. Clean, clean transition between the two pieces. Okay, now I'm just going around and tidying up some of the details and stuff on his legs. And for this, mainly just using the color shaper. Did Weed Eater, Eric, did they play different songs, or are they largely the same songs that they typically play? It's been a little while since I've seen them though, so I imagine it's at least slightly different. Now, the real question, Eric, is were you wearing hearing protection at the show? Did you remember to bring hearing protection? Hopefully you did. I've seen enough concerts without it that it does help, particularly afterwards. So the same songs, that makes sense. Yeah, so Eric, we need to sometime get a capture card and try and set up that other nicer camera, and I imagine that we could get a much nicer video set up here such that people could actually see what I was doing. um the because this little webcam, this Logitech webcam just doesn't do the job. Yeah. Actually, here I can bring up some pictures from the Weed Eater concert Greg and Eric were at. If people are interested in seeing them, that's some cool lighting. So, what are other people working on as of late? Any hobby progress or projects that people are working on? I know Eli, I've talked to you a little bit. You've been working on some models and stuff for Adepticon, and I imagine that's probably true with you too, Johnny, and some others as well, because Adepticon is coming up pretty quickly. And I feel I had all these high hopes of all these models and stuff that I wanted to finish for it, and we'll see how far I can get, but I feel at the very least I'll try and finish the Eldar model. Oh, Dave, you've primed the Bonereaper model? That's cool. Johnny, you're painting as we speak. That's good. Not too much time left. So right now I'm in the Eldar's legs. Like there are these little pretty deep channels in his legs and his like lower shins and such, and I think I'm partially filling some of those in such that there would actually be room for his legs. I mean, they're already pretty thin, but they'd have to be super thin to not. Yeah, actually, Dave, do you have an idea of what color palette you want to use for your model? I've still been kind of thinking about that for this model here. And I still haven't really made any final decisions. But one thing that I had been thinking about, Darren Latham in his series of like masterclass videos about that Blight King. The Blight King model, he has this kind of cool like greenish armor, which sort of brought back memories of some of the older Dark Eldar models. They had that kind of cool dark jade green color. It sort of got me thinking that maybe that would actually be kind of a neat thing to kind of incorporate some of that. Because that's a very like commonly associated color with, at least with the Dark Eldar. But then also, like, I sort of feel like really trying to play off the like whole bone nature and like bone color of the model that also wouldn't really be bad. And I sort of like painting like bone colors and whatnot, so like I feel that could also be a pretty good option for the model. So Johnny, what are you actually painting? Are you working on painting like the parts of like the board you're working on? And like the terrain and stuff? Like some of that which you've been showing on Instagram is pretty interesting looking with that almost like weird skull shaped, I don't know, like ship or building. Like really strange. I look forward to actually seeing it in person because I think it's gonna be pretty creepy and cool looking. Okay, so you're working on your models themselves. Yeah, Meandering Shade, like you've made a lot of good progress on the little that little Nurgle guy. I sort of feel like I sort of would have liked to kind of taken the model and sort of like gone through everything and with Darren. That would have been kind of fun. But like your progress on the model looks great. Have you decided what you're gonna do with his base? Are you gonna try and do like a snowy base as well? But yeah, like the that stippled green armor looks really nice. And one other thing, let me see. Where do I have it? Not too long ago, I got from Artist Opus had their one Kickstarter a while ago for their like Series D brushes, which are these like their special dry brushing ones. And so I have all of those. So I don't know, they might be kind of fun to use to try and play around with some more like interesting like painting textures and stuff like that. So maybe I'll try and use those on the Eldar model. Oh, that's cool, Johnny. Yeah, that. So your that like train thing is like a ship re-emerging from the warp that has maybe been lost for who knows how long. Johnny, are you gonna be bringing any of your other older models and stuff to Adepticon? I would love to see your little like, their little like Doom Marine in person. He's super cool. Yeah, so Yod related tech called heretically tied to the official. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, so Dave, I feel dry brushing. I certainly um kind of had a negative opinion of it for a while, but like I feel like just like anything, um it's just another technique that if used properly can really result in some really cool effects and techniques. Also, I guess they could mention Duncan recently started his own like a painting academy, I guess, and he's gonna be like making different videos, painting videos and such. And like he recently put, I think is his first like painting tutorial up on YouTube related to that, where he's painting a sister of battle that um is nice. So you could certainly go and look into that if interested. Hey Eric,
Hey, I don't know if people can hear me now.
say some more stuff.
Hey,
I
hey,
think they should be able to see
um,
okay.
back from the show. I don't know, maybe since it was started without.
Yeah,
No.
people say they can hear you.
Oh, hey, Dave. Glad that worked. Yeah, I wasn't sure if it would work okay since it didn't start on there, but yeah. Yeah, but no, Adam, as you were saying, Duncan Rhodes' painting studio seems to be live, so that's something.
Yeah, I watched most of his new video about painting the Sister of Battle. It was pretty good.
I mean, admittedly, I don't watch a huge amount of GW's painting videos, but damn, that seemed very much like a GW painting video.
I,
Admittedly, he kind of defined what a GW painting video would be.
yeah, he did. It's I feel a little more detailed and like longer than
Yeah, that's true, because I feel they've more and more like tried to shorten them down to like just a few minutes. So at
yeah,
least he was basically telling you everything.
yeah. It was a good video.
Yeah, no, so I'm kind of excited to see
He speaks
what
really
comes
well too.
next. No, yeah, he's good at it. And it's yeah, it'll just be nice to see what he does next and not have it necessarily be limited by, how GW wants things presented or what products or things that he's using.
I
Which
like
yeah,
watching like Darren Latham's videos. It's nice. Like every time he like brings up like the contrast paints and stuff, it's always like, you don't. I'm not thinning this like because I'm not really using it like you like contrast like you typically are supposed to use contrast paints. So like, um,
yeah. And his recent one, he was just like thinning them down a bunch with water just to kind of use them as like a glaze.
yeah. So I feel like that with like just about everything, like most mediums and stuff can be used in lots of different ways and you can achieve different effects and stuff depending on how you use it. So ultimately, I feel most of the stuff is just best if you just kind of explore it yourself and keep sort of an
Yeah.
open mind about stuff.
Nah, yeah, it's very true.
Johnny, you say I've recently learned the truth of contrast paints.
I don't know what the truth is, except that I love them.
That they're incredible. Nah, at this point, I've not really used them a whole lot, so I can't comment. The little that I have, okay, so they're pretty useful. Yeah, so I've used them pretty sparingly, and like most of the time, I was just using them as like glazes or just to add in an additional color here or there to get different effects and whatnot. So like I never actually used them um, with the idea that yo yeah I'm gonna use these to like paint the entire model or any of that. So
I've used them, but that's because I'm kind of a bad painter. I
yeah,
haven't developed any real techniques. But even with that, though, I find it's easier to kind of use them or an attempt to be some sort of glaze or whatnot than just hoping a thick coat of something will, you know, magically make the model look good. Or even if you try to do the thick coat to get something, you still kind of want to go in and darken areas or do some like glazing sort of stuff to add some color variations. So honestly, I mean I haven't worked too much with inks for that, but I kind of wonder if they're slightly like inks just because they seem to have a lot of pigment
mm-hmm.
and are somewhat translucent. So I kind of feel like that's why they seem to work okay for that. Though I may somewhat be talking out my ass. But yeah, well. Yeah, well, I guess it's interesting that going back to Duncan's thing, he's not having a Patreon, and instead he's having like a subscription thing where you can
No.
pay a monthly fee to have like access to his tutorials or something.
Okay.
But he's still gonna have videos on YouTube. I don't know if it's just a select, like a curated selection, or
Okay. Yeah, that's
not.
interesting.
And I think he sort of suggested in his one video that he he and the other person that's doing this with him, that's doing the filming and stuff, that he wanted that because Patreon kind of limits you to just have a blog like format for all the content you put on Patreon, and he wanted like kind of more control over the content
Yeah.
and how to organize it and such. But it seems like you could have just done that on a website though.
Well, they have. I think they do. They do have a website. Like they just wanted their own website. But I feel like a lot of places, if they have a Patreon, they have that, but then they also have like their own website or whatnot.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Oh, I guess just kind of have to see how it goes and what they do. Dave, you say that you're not ready for oils. I feel oils are almost like the easiest thing to work with. They're certainly easier than acrylics, just because you have such a much longer working time that I feel the sooner you give them a try, the better.
Yeah, I rather like them. They're really good for weathering and stuff like that.
Nah, yeah, I feel particularly for weathering, it's nice. You can put some on like sparingly and then basically just rub it all off with like some white spirits or like odorless thinner.
I find if you're trying to paint weathering with like acrylics, it's really easy to like apply too much and then like it's hard to fix it or get rid of it without like repainting. Whereas with like oils and enamels and stuff like that, um, anything that you apply, like you can very easily get rid of most of it
Hmm.
if you don't like the effect. So
Yeah, that's a nice aspect of them.
yeah,
I sent two pictures of the sister battle I got back to painting.
no, I'll bring that up.
I mean, they're not that different from what they like had been when, I don't know, however long ago we maybe showed some pictures.
I like the yellow eyes.
That was with contrast paint.
Thought yeah, of course it was.
Always the best.
I'll say.
I was initially gonna make kind of the inside of the robes more like a white, but then I realized it's kind of hard to do, and I didn't want to.
Yeah, I feel a lot of the they have a lot of kind of those like robes and stuff that it can be kind of they can really be problematic and
Yeah,
a pain to paint.
yeah, Dave. About like sort of a color palette ideas. Yeah, I'm not sure. Like for your Bonereaper guy, feel coming up with good color palettes is challenging.
I could sort of see with like Dave your model, you could have a lot of cool, strong like reds and stuff on the model. The model to me screams red.
Yeah, I mean, the model kind of reminds me of like a Warhammer Fantasy. Like what were they called? Blood dragons. There's that one particular type of
Yeah, that's
vampire.
true.
Like the armor looks more kind of nice vampire sort of armor than most or perhaps any of the GW models of that era when that was a thing.
Yeah, that's true.
No, I personally like painting red. Though admittedly, this sister I tried to use pretty much just GW's contrast, like flesh tear red, to see if could get anything that looked okay with that, and it maybe looks okay. It's a little more. The pictures make it. I feel the pictures are a little washed out there, so it's brighter than what it actually looks like. But I feel it looks all right. I guess I might need to go back in and do some actual real edge highlights.
They can help a lot.
And I need to also figure out how I want to go about making the black look not so bad.
Maybe try stippling and shit.
Yeah, I considered that.
That can add a lot of interesting like texture and stuff to something that didn't really have it.
Mm-hmm. Which that's I actually the inside of the cloak I kind of did that, but I don't think you can really easily see in the picture because it's not a great picture.
Is that what you did for like the leather holster too?
Not really. I actually,
Okay.
or kind of, but
Because that kind of.
I just used different contrast paints, and I guess it's sort of a stippling, but like a really broad, um, lazy sort of stippling that I just kind of dotted in different colors, and they're actually different contrast brown colors,
Okay.
and then did a little bit of edge highlighting that was not was a little too bright and not the right color because I didn't do it carefully. But I still think it looks all right. But yeah, it was an effort to, which I guess admittedly how I did that holster there was a little bit how I tried to use some of the contrast paints to paint like skulls and bone and whatnot. That I did the main skull one, maybe skeleton horde, the contrast paint, but then sort of like added other darker contrasts into some of the recesses and did some spots of different stuff just to make it look a little different. And I guess that's basically what I did there.
We can tell.
Yeah. I kind of just want to finish the model quickly and move on to the next, and rather than worry too much over it than just like not finish the model.
Yeah, that's always the danger.
Because I mean, the models, like I didn't really convert them or try to fix the bolters. Which, admittedly, if I would have had that little saw that I have now when I was assembling these, I would have tried to cut down the bolters.
Oh yeah,
Because
the little razor saw of sorts.
yeah, because I think it would help tremendously. Because I was just concerned I would try to cut it, then use an X-Acto knife, and then try to sand it. But all that's somewhat challenging to do a good job of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
started filling in some of the extra detail and stuff on the model's base too.
Okay. Hey, Dave. Dave Stewart. Nice to have you here.
Oh, hey, Dad.
Did you decide, are you gonna do anything more on that base?
I'm just filling in some of the. I can actually try and show it.
Like the big bolt sort of holes or whatever? Or I don't even know what you describe them as.
Yeah, those like big bolts or whatnot. I just filled them in with green stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And once it dries, I like sand them and make them look nicer.
Is it like a mixture of green stuff and epoxy sculpt?
Yeah. And
Because that
then
probably made it easier to fill it in with.
yeah, and then there's like the little aber mesh that I've added to it. So yeah, I think it'll look pretty nice.
I guess if I find it interesting, just adding that mesh makes the base look a lot better. And ultimately, it wasn't really that much effort, right?
No, it was actually pretty easy. Like the main thing is you really want some like cutters that was designed to cut brass etching. Um,
Yeah,
and in
because
this case, this is
yeah,
from
yeah,
Xeron Core, and it was designed to cut like
F-
brass etch, photo etch, and stuff.
yeah, because I had when I assembled that one little tank, the T-26. It had a few photo etch pieces, and trying to cut them with an exacto knife was kind of hard or challenging, and it never really got off. You could never really get the little nubs off properly,
Yeah.
and so I imagine that sort of nippers there would do a much better job.
Oh yeah. Like it cuts the brass and stuff super well, and you have much finer control than you would with like an exacto knife.
That's good.
So yeah, if you have any interest in like doing stuff with brass etching, you should look into
Hmm.
trying to find a similar cutter, because it'll help tremendously. Okay. Well, so I think I've largely finished the sculpting and stuff that I wanted to do tonight.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm gonna get rid of most of the putty that I made. Don't have anything to fill. But that's not entirely true. I can start filling the empty bottom of this Sister of Battle. Doesn't need to be hollow in there. As a matter of fact, I would rather it wasn't. Um, so then I can like actually tap it and
Yeah, that's hollow, all right. Well,
yes.
if it's hollow like that, it makes it like pinning to a base or something harder.
Yeah, I guess if you're putting it on a plastic base,
It
like maybe it
doesn't really
doesn't matter as
matter.
much, but yep, so I used all of the green stuff. There's a first time for everything. Uh, well, alright, everybody. Like, I think I'll probably, maybe we'll wrap up the stream here. I've been Actually going for like about an hour and a half. That's actually longer than I was thinking I would. But yeah, thanks everyone for joining us, and hopefully you gained at least a little bit of insight or whatever into how I work with things. Like, hopefully in the future we'll figure out a better camera system where you can actually see what I'm doing a little better than you can now. But until then, oh yeah, good luck with all your hobby projects and whatnot. And we'll talk to you again pretty soon. Probably sometime next week. Probably at a similar time. Alright, well, until then, it was fun.
See you, everybody.
Yep. Over and out.